guys. So on fishing kayaks, there's essentially 3 types of paddle stroke that you can use when you're on your kayak. So the first thing you need to do is get your grip on your paddle set correctly. One way of doing that is to do that, right? Or the other way to look at it is basically straight out from your shoulders. That's the way to do it. If you've got your blades offset, which rather than straight like that, if you've got them offset at say 45, 60, whatever, which is better if you're trying to slice through the wind, then you're going to need to grip with one hand. So basically whichever hand is your primary hand, you grip the shaft with that hand and swivel it with the other. So one hand stays gripped on the shaft and the other one swivels, righto? So basically, like I said, 3 different strokes. So the first stroke, right, is what they call a high angle paddle stroke, and it essentially goes like this. So you pull with that and push with this, right? So pull, push, pull, push. And when you're entering your blade in the water, it goes alongside of your kayak like that, so that you get the full effect of the spoon there on your blade. So in the water, push, and then when you bring your blade out of the water, swivel it up so that it comes up like that rather than comes up flat like that, which will spread, you'll get a lot of splashes and so on, spook the fish. So bring the blade up nice and slice it out of the water. So like so. Okay, use your shoulders and use your torso when you're paddling. So you don't sit there and do that. You'll be worn out. All right. Second stroke that you would use is what they call the low angle stroke, right? So this is a more relaxed stroke, and it's the sort of stroke that you'd use if you're doing a lot of touring and so on. So basically you need a longer paddle for that. So you'd lengthen your paddle, and your blade goes in at a shallower angle. Everything else is essentially the same, but your blade goes in at a lower angle. Causes, if you notice, the back of the kayak starts to swing a bit more, and it causes the back of the kayak to move. Primary thing with both of those strokes is that the first part of the stroke, so the first half of the stroke, that part of it is where you get all your power from. Once you've reached that point and you start going backwards, you're not actually producing much power, and that's when you need to swivel it slightly and get it out of the water. So the first half of your paddle stroke is where your power comes from. I mentioned that there was 3 strokes. So the third stroke is if you're standing and you're on a paddle board, you're paddle boarding it. So best way to do that is set them so the blades line up like that, right? And you just put your blade in the water and you push it like so, right? And just swap it from side to side. So depending on, I'm standing on the ground here, so I've got to shorten it, but depending on, you know, how high above the water you are, as to how far you've got to lengthen the blade. So the shaft, right? So, and you just stroke it like that. Again, the first half of your stroke is the power part, and when you're lifting the paddle out of the water, you want to turn it slightly so it comes out in a nice slice, right? Now I've said that, what, 3 times now, slice it out of the water when you're retreating it from the water. So the deal is, if you pull it out of the water like that, it'll flip all the water out, big noise, spook the fish. If you pull it out of the water like that, it'll slice out of the water and you just get drips. And when you bring your blade up, the drips will run down, hit your ring here, and drop down. Now, what you want to do then is make sure that your ring is set around about 3 to 4 fingers from the edge of your blade. If you have it up against your blade, it'll create a bigger splash in the water and potentially bigger splash across you as you sweep your blade around. So you want to set your ring down a little bit from the end of your blade along the shaft. Okay, that's just 3 basic tips on how to paddle a fishing kayak. One of those strokes is going to belong to you. Potentially if you want to learn them, all 3 strokes can belong to you, and you can use all 3 strokes when you're out on the water.